Being rich in France. How much is it? How much money do you need to truly be considered rich in France? Is it 3,000 euro a month? 5,000? Or do you have to own a villa, drive a Porsche and go to the Maldives 3 times a year for society to label you as rich? The question seems simple, but the answer is much more complex than you might think. Because wealth isn't just a question of numbers. It's also a matter of comparison, perception, and sometimes illusion. An example. According to INSEE, in France, a single person who earns a little more than 3,700 euro net per month is already part of the top 10%. Yes, you heard right. You don't need a bank account with 6 zeros. You don't need to live in a castle. Just 3,700 euros. And yet, many people with that income don't consider themselves rich at all. So why? Because it all depends on your environment, your expectations, and even your lifestyle. If you live in Paris with a rent of 1,500 euros, that 3,700 euros might not seem like a lot. But if you live in a small provincial town, that same income can completely change your quality of life. And this is where the thinking gets interesting. Being rich isn't just about accumulating money. It's also about feeling free. Free to choose, free to say no, free to take your time. And numbers aren't always enough to measure that. So I ask you the question again, but differently. Is wealth a specific amount? Or is it an inner feeling? Get ready. Because in this video, we're going to dive into the heart of this issue that concerns us all. We're going to discover how much do you really need to earn to be rich in France, but also why this number can be misleading, and what true wealth means in everyday life. What you think you're rich for may not be the reality. And trust me, you might be surprised. Definition of wealth in France. When we talk about wealth, the first image that often comes to mind is that of the very wealthy. Billionaires, celebrities, and CAC 40 executives. However, wealth in France is not defined solely by the extreme. There are specific, quantified criteria used by economists and statisticians to assess who can be considered rich. First, we must understand one essential fact: median income. In France, the median income is around 1,900 euros net per month for a single person. This means that half of French people earn less than this amount, and the other half earn more. This is our reference point. From there, the INSEE and the Observatory of Inequalities set the wealth threshold. A single person is considered rich when they have an income greater than 3,700 euros net per month. In other words, it is approximately double the median income. For a couple with 2 children, the threshold rises to around 7,700 euros net per month. In other words, if you earn 3,700 euro in France, you already belong to the 10% of the richest people in the country. And if your income exceeds 5,800 euro net per month, you enter the famous 1% of the richest. On paper, this sounds huge. But in reality, many people at this income level don't see themselves as wealthy. Why? Because wealth is not just a number. It also depends on the lifestyle. Let's take a concrete example. With 4,000 euros per month, a person living in Limoges can feel very comfortable. But in Paris, where a simple apartment can cost more than 1,500 euros in rent, this same sum can quickly seem insufficient. This is where the distinction between objective wealth and subjective wealth. Wealth objective, that's what the figures say. Income, wealth, standard of living. Wealth subjective, it's what you feel. Do you feel financially free? Can you say yes or no without fear of ending up in the red? Do you have the peace of mind not to think about your bank account at the end of each month? In other words, you can be in the richest 10% and not feel rich. And conversely, you can have a modest income. But if your needs are covered, if you live without debt, if you enjoy your time and your family, you can feel a form of inner wealth. This is why defining wealth in France cannot be limited to a precise threshold. Yes, there are figures, but behind these figures lie very different realities. And understanding this nuance is already entering into the truth of the matter. How much does it take to be rich in France? It's the question that intrigues everyone. It's discussed in the media, at family dinners, and even at work. At what level can we say we are rich in France? The answers vary, but the official figures give us clear benchmarks. The threshold of the richest 10%. According to INSEE and the Observatory of Inequalities, a single person is considered rich as soon as they earn 3,700 euros net per month. This represents approximately 44,000 euros net per year. For a couple without children, the threshold rises to approximately 5,500 euros net per month. For a couple with 2 children, it is necessary 7,700 euros net per month. In other words, if you exceed this threshold, you are already part of the top 10% of incomes in France. The 1% threshold, the famous club of the most well-off. Here, we are talking about an income higher than 5,800 euros net per month for a single person, or close to 70,000 euros net per year. This may seem enormous, and yet, compared to international standards, France remains below countries like the United States or Switzerland, where the thresholds are much higher. The ultra-rich beyond official statistics, there are those we call the ultra-rich. We fall into this category when we talk about assets greater than 30 million euros, or incomes exceeding several 100,000 euros per year. Here, we are completely removed from the daily life of the average French person. These are the great fortunes, the heirs, the great entrepreneurs. Income versus wealth. Be careful. Being rich is not just about earning a lot of money each month. It is also hold significant assets. In France, to be among the 10% of households with the most assets, you need to own around 500,000 euros net of debt, real estate, investments, savings. To enter the top 1%, you must exceed the 2 million euros in net assets. Paris versus province. But these numbers don't mean the same thing everywhere. Cost of living changes radically depending on where you live. In Paris, 3,700 euros net may seem normal. Rent of 1,500 euros for a small apartment, high prices for transport, going out, and even shopping. The result? You're among the richest 10%. But your lifestyle doesn't necessarily make you feel rich. In province, with the same income, your daily life is transformed. A house with a garden, a lower cost of living, more room to save and travel. Here, 3,700 euros is clearly a comfortable life, which puts you in the rich category in the eyes of others. Concrete anecdotes. Claire, executive in Paris. She earns 6,000 euros net per month. Statistically, she is in the 1% of the richest, yet she sometimes feels middle class. Between her rent of 2,200 euros, taxes, childcare costs for her children, she does not have the impression of having a rich standard of living. Marc, engineer in Bordeaux. He earns 4,000 euros net per month. He pays off a loan for a nice house, goes on vacation every year, and still has a comfortable savings capacity. Statistically, he is just above the 10% threshold, and in his circle he is clearly considered the successful one. These examples clearly show that wealth is not a single line to cross. It varies depending on the city, expenses, priorities, and above all, personal perception. In summary, top 10%, plus 3,700 euros per month, one person. Richest 1%, plus 5,800 euros per month, one person. Ultra riches, several 100,000 euros per year, or plus 30 million euros of assets. So yes, being rich in France can be a precise number. But the real question is feeling rich just about income or freedom? Wealth is not just about money. We've talked a lot about numbers. 3,700 euros, 5,800 euros, assets of 500,000 euros or 2 million. These are all useful benchmarks. But really, is it real wealth comes down to a well-stocked bank account? Ask yourself this question for a moment. If you had 1 million euros but were constantly stressed, sick, without free time, stuck in toxic relationships, would you really feel rich? Probably not. Because money is a tool, not an end. Health. The first wealth you can have all the gold in the world. But if you're not healthy, every euro loses its value. Imagine a billionaire bedridden by illness. His money can't give him back his energy, his vitality, the simple joy of going out for a walk without pain. Health is the only wealth we forget, until the day we lose it. Time, the invisible wealth. Another example. Some people work 70 hours a week, earn impressive sums, but never have time to enjoy them. They chase numbers, but they don't have the freedom to stop. Conversely, someone who earns less, but has free time to travel, to be with their loved ones, to pursue their passions. This person experiences a wealth that money cannot buy. Freedom, the ultimate luxury. Being rich isn't just about accumulating. It's about being able to choose where you live, who you spend your time with, what you do with your days. The freedom to say no to a toxic boss, and no to a project that doesn't inspire you, no to a life that doesn't suit you. Perhaps that's the true definition of wealth. Relationships, the treasure we overlook. And then there's love, friendship, family. You can have a huge house, but if you eat alone every night, what's that wealth worth? Money can buy luxurious dinners, but it can't buy a genuine smile, a warm hug, or the feeling of being loved. Safety and peace of mind. Finally, wealth is also about not being afraid, not dreading the end of each month, not dreading an unexpected bill, living with the assurance that even if a problem arises, you have a safety net. This peace of mind is sometimes worth more than a large sum of money mismanaged. Comparative example. Paul has 1 million euros. He runs a business, but he only sleeps 4 hours a night. He is anxious. He no longer has a personal life. Every day is a battle against stress. Amine earns 2,200 euros a month. He has a small apartment, goes on vacation once a year, plays soccer with his friends, and has dinner with his family almost every night. He's not rich according to statistics, but he feels free, happy, and alive. So I ask you the question, and you, do you just want money or real wealth? Because wealth isn't just about what you have, it's about how you feel. And sometimes, the richest people aren't who you think they are. How to achieve this wealth in France? We have seen what the numbers mean. We have talked about perception, freedom, and happiness. But one question remains. How, in concrete terms, can you build your wealth in France? Not just to enter the statistically richest 10%, but to achieve true security, freedom of choice, and financial peace of mind. Savings, the solid foundation. Before even thinking about investing, the first step is saving. Many people neglect it, but it's the foundation. Putting aside 10 to 20% of its income every month radically changes the relationship with money. Example: if you earn 2,000 euros and save 200 euros per month, you'll have 2,400 euros after 1 year. In 5 years, you'll have nearly 12,000 euros. And that's without any complicated investment, just discipline. This is the first step towards freedom, having a safety net. Real estate investment, the French pillar. In France, real estate remains the royal road to wealth. Buying your primary residence is already a step, but investing in rental properties can transform your life. Example: Sophie buys a small apartment in the suburbs for 100,000 euros, financed by a loan. She rents it for 500 euro per month. After repaying her loan, she has a net profit. This is a source of passive income. In the long term, not only does their property increase in value, but it also generates cash flow. This is how many French people build up solid assets. Financial investments, making your money work for you. Money that sits idle loses its value due to inflation. So investing some of your savings is essential. The PEA, Share Savings Plan. Invest in French and European stocks with tax benefits after 5 years. Life insurance, a flexible investment which allows you to invest both in security, euro funds, and in risk, units of account. The PER, Retirement Savings Plan. Interesting for preparing for the future and reducing your taxes. Example: Julien invests 300 euros per month in a PEA, Share Investment Plan. After 20 years, with an average performance of 7% per year, he can exceed 150,000 euros. The magic of compound interest does the rest. Entrepreneurship, the path to independence. Starting your own business, launching a project, is often the fastest way to achieve real wealth. Salaries, even high ones, have ceilings. Entrepreneurship, on the other hand, opens the door to unlimited potential. But be careful. It is also a risky path, which requires courage, perseverance, and strategy. Example: Karim left his engineering job to launch a tech startup. The first few years were difficult, but after 5 years, his company is profitable and he's generating income he never would have imagined if he remained an employee. Common mistakes to avoid. Living beyond one's means. Earning more is useless if every euro is spent. Do not diversify. Putting all your money into a single project or investment is dangerous. Wanting to go too fast. Wealth is a marathon, not a sprint. Quick hits create more losers than winners. Discipline, time, and patience. The real secret isn't a magic formula. It's consistency. Those who become rich aren't necessarily the smartest, but often the most disciplined. They know how to wait, reinvest, and resist the temptation to spend it all. A financial proverb says, "Time in the market is more important than timing the market." In other words, it is not buying at the right time that makes the difference, but staying invested for a long time. Wealth as a state of mind. Finally, let's not forget that wealth isn't built on numbers alone. It's also a question of mindset. Believing it's possible. Being willing to learn, to train, to take measured risks. Because money does not come to those who watch it pass by, but to those who decide to attract it through their actions. The illusions surrounding wealth. When we talk about wealth, a host of images invade our minds. Huge villas with infinity pools, luxury cars parked in front of a 5-star hotel, private jet travel. We see all of this every day on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube. But be careful. This vision is an illusion. Illusion number 1. The rich are all happy. This is probably the biggest lie. We spontaneously associate money with happiness, as if one automatically guarantees the other. Yet how many tragic stories have we heard about immensely rich but deeply unhappy celebrities? Money relieves, it brings comfort, but it does not cure loneliness. It does not erase depression, and it does not replace love. Illusion number 2. Visible wealth equals real wealth. On social media, many people display a facade of wealth. Renting a Lamborghini for the day, posing in an Airbnb villa, pretending to own it, showing off wads of cash that don't belong to them. This is modern theater. The truth is that the real rich don't always feel the need to expose themselves. Some millionaires live simply, without extravagance, because they know that freedom is more precious than appearances. Illusion number 3. Being rich is just having a lot of money. Raw money is often confused with financial freedom. The difference is enormous. Someone who earns 10,000 euros a month but spends 11,000 lives in constant fear, a prisoner of their lifestyle. Conversely, a person who earns 3,000 euros per month but spends 2,000 and invests the difference builds solid security. True wealth is not about earning more, but about keep more. It is the ability to create a gap between what comes in and what comes out, to transform this gap into freedom. Illusion number 4. When I have money, I will finally be free. False. Many people become prisoners of their money. They always want more, work more, and end up lacking what they were looking for in the first place: time, tranquility, inner peace. True freedom is knowing when to stop, not letting the race for money dictate every decision. Conclusion of this part. So yes, money matters. Yes, it makes life easier. But believing that wealth is only what you see in a bank account or an Instagram photo is condemning yourself to chasing a mirage. True wealth is that which is not always visible. Serenity. Time for oneself and for those one loves. The ability to choose. Everything else is just illusion. Now that we've arrived, it's time to take a step back. We've deconstructed illusions, analyzed the true nature of wealth, talked about financial freedom, and shown that value doesn't reside solely in raw money. But what can we learn, concretely? Key points to keep in mind. Money doesn't buy happiness. It accompanies it, but it does not create it. True happiness comes from relationships, meaning in your life, and inner peace. Visible wealth is not always real. What you see on social media is often just a facade. True wealth is discreet, solid, and doesn't always seek to show off. Freedom greater than raw money. Accumulating money without knowing how to manage it is like remaining a prisoner. True wealth is the gap between what you earn and what you keep, and above all, the ability to make choices. Time and serenity are priceless. Having millions but lacking health, time, or inner peace is not being rich. The ultimate wealth is having a balanced life. A practical message. If you want to build your wealth, start small but think big. Save a little each month. Invest in what you understand. Cultivate your skills. They are your true capital. And above all, don't try to copy the illusory model you see everywhere. Your wealth must reflect your life, your values, your story. A question for you. So I ask you, you who are watching this video, what wealth do you want to achieve? And why? Is it a wealth of money? A wealth of time? A wealth of freedom? Or a wealth of heart? The answer is yours alone, and it is what will give meaning to your path. The final word: never forget, true wealth is not just what you own, but what you create, what you pass on, and what you leave behind. Money can be lost or gained, but a meaningful life is something that will last forever. So go forward, build, choose wisely. And remember, millionaires don't look poor, they look free.